Today is June 21st, 2013, and we are at Glenville State College speaking with Miss Fran Schmetzer. Did I pronounce that right?
Yeah, but how about Mrs.?
Mrs. Fran Schmetzer, yes. Okay. Can you, what was your maiden name, ma'am?
Myers, M-Y-E-R-S. My aunt, Ivy Lee Myers, was a teacher here from 1924 or 5 to 1970 something or other.
Uh-huh.
And so my grandmother lived here, and I was in and out of Glenville because of my grandmother. And the year I was 7, I spent my first summer here and had classes in the building right behind it here, the ad building here.
Okay, and then what year would that have been?
1930.
1930? Okay. Well,
29.
29. Okay. Okay. Well, that's close. Let's talk a little bit about your early upbringing. You said that you weren't actually from here, but you had relatives that lived in this area.
Yes, my dad was born in Wayne, just south of Huntington, and he had 4 sisters, all of whom were teachers, and happened that none of them married, so they were all teachers for life here in West Virginia.
Okay. And as you said, you came here a lot of times to visit your aunt. Is that what you said?
And grandmother.
And grandmother.
Yes.
Okay.
So, yep, from the time I was 7 and 8, those 2 years I spent the summer here and went to classes up behind me.
Oh, okay.
And, so then...
would that have been considered the training school?
Yeah, the training school. And my Aunt Ivy, who taught here, never called it Glenville High School. It was the training school, even after there was a building over there.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. But they had to have summer classes for children because teachers for elementary just taught, went to college for 2 years, or someone like Max Ward, who taught here for years, passed the teacher exam when he graduated from high school and started teaching in one room school.
Uh-huh.
And so the teachers that wanted their 4-year degree had to come back in the summers or take extension classes around over the state. And so the graduating class, when I graduated, we had about 30, I think, that were full students here, and we had 65 or 70 in the graduating class because they had taken the other classes over the years.
Oh, I see. So when you came here for your higher education?
I just stayed. I had my high school and college right here.
Oh, I see. Okay. So as a child, did you receive any other elementary education other than here?
Yes, I started school in Pennsylvania. I was, the 3 oldest of us were born in Pennsylvania. And so I had half of 1st grade outside of Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, and the second half of 1st grade in Virginia, in 2nd grade in a 3-room school in Virginia. And then I was here, I skipped 3rd, 4th, and I skipped, wait a minute, I can't remember now. Yeah, 4th and 5th, I was in another school. Dad spent 3 years looking for a farm outside of Richmond, Virginia.
Uh-huh.
And so when I was 9 years old, he got the farm. He left the family up here while he was putting in electricity and plumbing, and I was the carpenter's helper there. And then he traded. He brought me up here, and I went to school, and my mother and the younger children went back to the farm that was now livable.
Oh, I see.
So from then on, this was as much home as the farm in Virginia.
Okay. All right. Well, moving a little further then, what's some of your remembrances or your recollections from your time here in school, high school and college?
Well, let's still start with elementary school.
Okay.
The house that was on that parking lot belonged to, I'm not going to say my names again, name the library.
Would have been the kid house?
Yes,
okay.
That was the kid house. And one of the kid daughters married a person, the last name was Jack. So people around here might remember Patty and Margie Jack, who were playmates of mine because we all lived on the hill up here.
Uh-huh.
And I knew them all the way through high school and much of college. And they had an aunt that was, Come on now, Drusilla. No. Oh dear, she was the 4th grade teacher for years here, and she's buried right up past the building here. And I've lost her name. It'll come to me. And I want to say Drusilla Kidd, but she wasn't Miss Kidd. So I'm saying the wrong name.
I think there was a Drusilla Kidd.
She must have. Well, she taught 4th grade. I had her for summer school the summer before I went into 4th grade, and then and Olive had her for the years that she was here. My older sister had her, and I just think she was the best teacher ever could have been. And she taught mythology that summer school, and that prompted me to go to Greece. I love Greek mythology. So I've been to Greece 3 times because of Drusilla Kidd, because of my teacher right here in summer school. So anyway, high school, you don't want little stories about somebody, do you?
Well, it depends on whatever you want to share, man.
Well, you can cut what's on here. You'll have to cut what's on here. Okay. I did have 1 year of school in Virginia, and 8th grade was freshman in high school. So I never had anything called 9th grade. I came up here and had 10th grade, and Dad thought the West Virginia schools were better than the Virginia schools, and so I was scared. Here these kids had all had 9th grade, and I hadn't, and I was in 10th grade. Algebra class, Mr. Hull, Hull. At the end of the first week of school, he gave a quiz and said, when you're finished, come up and put your paper upside down on the desk. Well, I liked algebra. I thought I knew it. I got finished, and Rutledge Jr., Madeline Conrad, other people I knew were top students, hadn't brought a paper up. And so I pretended, I checked everything, looked right. I pretended to work until about 5 papers went on the desk, and then I put my paper up. Monday, the papers came back. I had everything right, and I had a B. And I said, how could I have everything right and be a B? He said, because it took you so long to do it. I never took so long again for my papers, because math was easy for me.
So you were just basically trying to be courteous there. And
well, I was scared. I was scared that I didn't know something. But anyway, yep.
Okay. When did you determine that you were just going to finish up with your education after high school? When did you decide you were going to keep going?
That was always given. There was no decision making. That was just what we did in our family. I mean, even Dad's 4 sisters, and we're talking about the early 90s now, they all went to college. So
early 1890s.
Well, yeah,
yes.
yeah. Okay. No, early 1900s.
Okay.
We just, we didn't have a decision, and I guess Olive and we never thought to ask the questions. And then younger sister and brother did some schooling in Richmond, 2-year school, but they all ended up coming here to graduate. All 5 of us graduated from Glenville State College. It was the best schooling we got.
Okay, great. Let's talk about some other instances that you, just any other stories you have during your time in school here?
Ooh, let's think. I took piano lessons, and I had no talent. Mildred Arbuckle, and I knew Ernest Lee. And of course, when our Presbyterian church burned, he gave the land that the Presbyterian church is on on Route 5 down the river, up the river. No, down the river. Anyway. Ernest, I don't know if you want this. Ernest Lee was sitting on his porch watching while I played hide and seek with all the boys up and down the street, and he wasn't allowed to play with us. When I turned 12, my grandmother said I was a little too old now to be playing with all the boys up and down the street, and I had to start staying in too. But we all felt so sorry for Ernest Lee, because he was sitting on the porch wishing he could be with us.
Oh.
They, oh, I don't know, the person, and she moved away a long time ago, lived in one of the houses, I think maybe the white one there, and she, roller skating was a craze back when I was in school. Now, Dolly Lawrence, later Murphy, said to me, if you would stop roller skating all the time, you'd get all your homework done.
Uh-huh.
Well, Mary Jo Miller, who lived over there, was broke both arms roller skating. When I broke an arm, I only broke one arm, and I felt like I hadn't done anything special at all because I only broke one arm.
Uh-huh.
That's not schooling. So.
But that's an interesting story.
Yeah. When I changed, my aunt put me in elementary education, and I knew I wanted secondary education, and so after the first semester I changed to secondary, and walked into the algebra class, and I've already told you an algebra story, and Max Ward was a member of that class as a junior in college that year, and he said, I walked in and looked at the class and said, all boys. Hey, I majored in math. If it was going to be all boys, that would be right there.
Uh-huh.
So, college was fun.
Well, what was a hard course? What would you have said would have been the hardest?
Well, I didn't really memorize my chemistry. Now, I was math and physical science, but I had a very good partner, a fellow that wrote up the chemistry things, and I managed to memorize what I had to do for a test, and then I'd forget it. But later I taught high school chemistry, and I was pretty easy on those students because I knew I hadn't been too good in chemistry.
Okay. All right. Well, as I'd mentioned before, a lot of this interview is going to be. I mean, we could sit here and talk for hours.
Oh yes.
About your early life, but a lot of it's going to be a little later on. So moving on, after graduation here, what did you do?
I got a master's in Christian education in Richmond, Virginia, at the Presbyterian School of Christian Education.
Okay.
I went to work for churches, but the first job I got was what was called a congregational church, Congregational Christian Church, and they joined with others, hoping that all of these general multiple churches would get together at one time. That didn't happen, but I worked 12 years before I got married, and then after I had children I started working in churches again. So I had quite a long career from the church work, and I had 16 years of substitute teaching.
Did you feel well prepared as you went into the master's program down there?
Hey, I was a teenager. I thought I knew everything.
Uh-huh.
I felt, yes. I think the preparation I got here was excellent. And as you look at the alums, you know it was. You know it was.
Okay.
Well, people then weren't pressured to stay in school. If they weren't doing well, the school, Olive, my older sister, thinks that they purposely flunked out half the freshmen and half of the remaining sophomores. So by the time you got to be a junior or senior, you were a dedicated student. I don't know that I was dedicated to anything except good grades, but I remembered things long enough to pass the tests well.
So numbers in enrollment may have not been as big of a stressor at that point.
Oh, it wasn't. It surprised me when I was on the board that we were trying to keep everybody who entered in school instead of finding out whether they belonged or needed to be doing some other thing.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, you basically, when did you basically return to Glenville to start spending your I guess your...
I was gone 47 years and I retired here.
Okay, and you would have retired here, that would have been in the 90s, correct?
1990.
Okay. What was your impressions upon coming back?
It had changed, and I believe change is growth, and that was fine. Max Ward was still working here, and his wife, Grace, I had gotten to know when I worked in Minnesota, and they were living in Wisconsin, and I knew she was going to be a good friend. We ended up hiking together 6 or 7 days a week, and you know, I had my goals to stay healthy and all that good stuff, and Max was taking me on tour to show me all the changes that had happened, and I accepted them. I was happy.
Uh-huh. And would you have moved into the house that's directly across the street from here at that point?
Yes, I did. Actually, my sister Olive and I had bought land out on Duck Run, and she drew house plans, and we figured being able to make a pond. Her husband trained dogs and wrote books about dog training and things like that.
Uh-huh.
And then he said, I am not moving to West Virginia. Now, he was a Pennsylvania man,
Uh-huh.
and he was a city man. He didn't want to be in the country. And we're both country people, or
Uh-huh.
small town people. And so eventually I decided, well, he had 2 heart attacks, and he said to Olive and me, you better make your plans because the third won't take me. And so we really thought we were going to build a house on Duck Run. And he decided a few weeks later or months later, he stopped smoking, he changed his diet, he started exercising, and before the 8 years his third heart attack took him, why, he had built a retirement home on the family farm in Virginia, where our folks moved when I was 9 years old.
Okay.
And so then I knew I couldn't build a house and live by myself out on Duck Run. And
So
that's
Olive
when,
stayed in Virginia.
She stayed in Virginia, and I bought the house here.
Okay. All right. How was life then? I mean, what was the initial few years like after coming back? Did you have much interaction with the students and the college?
Oh, absolutely. First, I applied for a part-time job. I mean, I was healthy, and I wouldn't have retired except that I was working at Reader's Digest, and they were downsizing, and my boss would have been downsized as a person who came in after I did, and she needed a job. I didn't need a job. I was past 65 by that time.
Mm-hmm.
And so I went ahead, and this house had been rented, and then I had had it redone on the inside, and so I didn't want to rent it again to the families. I wanted to move in while it was still fresh and clean on the inside.
Oh, so you'd owned this house for
I bought the house in 1983, so I'd owned it for 7 years by that time,
okay.
and had it rented. And well, I think it was 83, 84, somewhere in there.
Okay.
And so by the time that I moved in, I knew exactly what I was doing. And of course, I had come often to visit, had stayed in touch with the wards and, you know, other people around.
Had you bought it as a kind of vacation home, or?
No, I just bought it to retire when
when
Ollie's
you-
husband decided not to have his third heart attack.
Oh, I see.
So I came back because the college was my life.
Uh-huh.
And well, by that time I'd been married, had 4 children, divorced, and so I, you know, I knew what my life had been, and I knew where I wanted to continue it,
Okay.
and this was it.
Okay. So for some years while you were living there, you actually rented out some rooms to college students too.
Applying for a job, I first applied at the library, and I said, I want a part-time job, and I suppose this thing happens to students. Well, it was willing to hire me for a full-time job, and that every year or something you'd change. Sometimes you'd be daytime work, and sometimes you'd be evening work, and that kind of thing. And I said, no. And Olive and I were both here when Elder Hostel arrived. And I'd read of it, but hadn't any personal experience with Elder Hostel. And that Sunday, we went up to the cafeteria at the college to eat. I didn't know what restaurants might be open on Sunday mornings, Sunday noons. And they said, oh no, when you paid for your week, you paid for all your meals. What paid for the week? I don't know, you know. Oh, aren't you Elder Hostel? No. So we went into the office on Monday and learned what was available, and came back later that same summer, and our first Elder Hostel was right here. And eventually we took 4 Elder Hostels here. So by the time I retired, why, I offered to work Elder Hostel. And I said, I know you have students working, and he said, well...
Was Duke Talbot running it at that time?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. And he was state director.
Okay.
And he was also running this one. So he was right happy with the idea of somebody else running this one.
Uh-huh.
And so I said, I can pour lemonade. I don't care what I do. And he put me on as a coordinator. And I think the first elder hostel I did was Summersville. We still owned the Summersville campus.
Oh, yes.
And it was all planned, but the person who was supposed to coordinate it just didn't want an evening, week-long program. She was tired already. And so I walked in on her plan. And then he had elder hostels around the state. Well, as 3 years went on, I had 19 summer elder hostel weeks around the state, some of them 2 weeks the same calendar week, because if you had videotaping your golf, what do you do when you hit a golf ball? You swing.
Tee-off?
Videotaping your golf swing or whatever that was. Why, then they'd have to have another one with general things because a spouse might not play golf. Mostly it was the men that played the golf. So we'd have, say, 2 program weeks at the same time. And top class size was meant to be 24. So you could have up as 48 people on campus and 2 sets of classes going. Well,
and this mostly took place during the summer.
it was during the summer.
Okay.
They used to have, I think it was 8 weeks during the summer, but we ended up doing more now that I had no other project. Why, I was in the office every day checking the mail, and we put on other weeks and so on. And so that I discovered I was starting to have grandchildren, and I couldn't babysit my grandchildren off in Virginia when I was doing an elder hostel week. So I retired again, as Duke wrote a thing, and Dr. Simmons said, okay, we'll put the elder hostel program here. And so, okay.
And that would have been late 90s, correct?
Yes, yes.
Okay. And what we basically started out, we were, is there any turbulence, or was you involved in, or is there anything you'd like to say about any of the turbulence that went on during the 90s?
Oh, I tried not to be part of it. I always was not in close touch with the Simmons, but always spoke back and forth as we passed each other. And so I would say, one time we went to Charleston, and I say we, the people that wanted to keep, said his name and now I've forgotten it, who was it put me on the board? Powell.
Dr. Powell?
Why, a whole bunch of us went to Charleston, packed the committee meetings. I don't know what day of the week it was, and I did that. And they generally, no, I mean, I was a little outspoken that I didn't want changes, really. The college was what I liked. I wanted it, and I definitely was unhappy that they took Summersville away from us. And then essentially the word was that they took Parkersburg away from us, but legally that belonged to the University of West Virginia all the time. And we just happened to take over the leadership, and so most of those students were coming here after their 2 years in Parkersburg. And when it got to be a big deal, and we started putting a third year, well, not in Parkersburg, put a third year in Summersville. But why West Virginia got interested and ready to take back their leadership of that, and they were legally, it was theirs. It wasn't ours. So, hey, why do you fight it?
Yeah. So yes, Parkersburg was actually, it would have been removed in the early 90s because of they wanted, basically it was a decision was made, from what I understand, there was some worries that potentially Parkersburg would end up becoming larger than even Glenville and whatnot.
There's a possibility
Yes.
with the way population was going.
Yes.
Yes.
So there's the bell for 3 o'clock, I believe.
Yes, and I always liked the clock striking, and when they put in the automatic thing, why, it's like my porch was a sounding board. I couldn't talk on the porch because it bounced back off my windows at me. I couldn't talk on the phone. I would look if I was going to eat dinner, and I'd wait till I knew the bell wasn't going to ring while I was eating on the porch. But I loved that porch. And at one time, every student spoke to you as they went by. And a lot of students, well, when I first moved, I was pushing my own lawnmower. Students living next door, I would come home from being gone and my lawn had been mowed. They had never seen a lawnmower without a motor on it. And so they would push it to see how it would go.
Oh, I see. Okay. So you had the one from several years ago.
Oh, I had a heavy one. And when the roller broke off on the back, I sold it to a neighbor down the way here and bought a lightweight one, and I wore the first one out before I hired somebody to do the lawn. I hired a high school boy to help me, and he liked mowing the lawn too, and I thought, okay, he likes doing it, he can do it.
Okay. Well, before the bell interrupted us, we were actually, you had mentioned the Parkersburg campus, and you were also mentioning the Summersville campus. Well, the Summersville campus would have been, that actually would have, we would have lost that in 2003, so that brings us to the late 90s, when you would have been sought out to be part of the initial board of advisors. Is that it?
That's right, yes.
Okay.
When Dr. Powell came, his wife was still working and didn't come the first few weeks. She wanted to give a little more notice before she gave up her job. And so he was here, he was eating in the college cafeteria, and there was a picnic out at, oh, come on. I'm thinking what's the state park south of here a little ways?
Cedar Creek?
Cedar Creek.
Yes.
There was a retired school employees picnic out there. Well, I invited him to come out, and somehow he was interested in that, and his wife wasn't here anymore, so I invited him to come out, and we came out early and we sat at a picnic table while we were getting acquainted, because we weren't really acquainted yet then, and all the people parking would stop by and speak, and so he ended up really getting acquainted and being invited by Fred Radebaugh to make a little talk after that, and I somehow I got along with him so well that we just sort of stayed in touch. And I guess that's why he asked if I was interested, and he knew that I moved back here because these were my glory days. This was what I really loved. And so he asked if I wanted to be on the Board of Advisors and then the Board of Governors as it came up. And my goodness, that was something I'd never dreamed was going to happen. I mean, how many nice things can happen to you when you retire? And of course I said yes and loved it.
Okay. One thing I should have asked in the beginning of the interview, I'm sorry to go back, but when was you born?
State College, Pennsylvania. My dad taught at Penn State.
I mean, when?
Oh, when? 1922.
1922.
Yes.
Okay. So, upon taking, basically it was in the line that I guess when you were named Board of Advisors, on the Board of Advisors, it was pretty much people knew that a transformation of the higher education system in West Virginia was about to take place.
Yes.
Okay. And that each of the smaller institutions were going to get their own Board of Governors. So you would have been on the initial first Board of Governors the school had ever had.
Correct.
Okay. Is there some things you'd like to say about that? The initial first few, maybe the first few meetings, how did everything come together, and how did you feel about that?
We were all very polite, and so far as I know, everybody on it was happy with Dr. Powell. I hadn't, they never made waves in the meeting, and if they made waves outside the meeting, and I know somebody who wasn't on the board that made waves, and thought that I didn't have the right background to be on the board, and that got told to me by somebody, and what he answered to the man. That was so funny. Later we were interviewing the next president after Dr. Powell, and I named this particular man. I got asked a specific question, and I named this man who thought I didn't belong on the board, and I said, oh, he knows more than I do about that. And he was friendly after that, and I won't say who it was.
Well, okay, okay. So you were there. There was actually ended up being that's whenever we'd actually started running into a little bit of trouble with legislature.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. Can you run through that as you remember with?
Well, I told you I stayed polite. Some people I knew better than others, but I considered myself friendly with everybody on either side, and I didn't choose to make waves myself. But I did go down to Charleston when we packed the committee meetings, and to keep them from making us into a 2-year school with no dorms, which is one of the things they were trying to do.
Mm-hmm.
And I spoke in favor of the college being allowed to grow as it is. One thing that did bother me over the years, and by that time I was just almost off, because you were supposed to be on for 4 years or until you were replaced. And at the end of my 4 years, I went off in 2005 because I had trouble with my nouns and some of my words, and I like to talk, and if I talk, I'd like it to be right.
Yes.
And so I opted not to stay on a second term so I was on 5 years, 99 to 2005, but 5.5 years.
Okay.
And I felt I had run my turn on that one. But anyway, I did what I could. People knew where I stood, always knew where I stood, but I don't know that I was very much a part of the decision making for that, because I wasn't too loud. I wasn't raucous about it.
Do you have any thoughts or any ideas of what really precipitated that coming to a head? That would have been in early 2003 when it really came down to the point of the bill had initially been written that they were going to close the school or it'd be privatized. And
well, I tried not to get too deep in that. It seemed to have something, the fact Dr. Simmons, who had been president, had been the state Board of Education, I think, chairman for a while there.
Chancellor, yes.
Yeah, and I never tried to find out any of the background stuff, because, I mean, I worked with what was going on right this minute,
yes.
And I really didn't want to know what had gone on to precipitate that.
Okay, all right. Is there anything else you can remember about your time as from Board of Governors that would be of interest? I mean, basically things didn't work out perfectly when those things happened, but at least we were allowed to save the school, and it continued its 4-year programs, and basically still continued its associate degree programs that would have been considered community college aspects,
right.
Forestry,
yeah.
and
it came out, so it worked for us.
Uh-huh.
I've always been a little not too pleased that we try to keep everybody in school when some people can find out their first semester that they really don't want 4 years here. They want to do something else along the line, and I think they ought to be allowed to go without penalizing the school. And most of these people like the school and don't want to penalize it. They just want their own life to be different. But if we lose students, we are in trouble with the state.
Yeah.
And I think that's poor vision on the state part.
Okay. You said that you gave up your role in 2005.
Yeah.
As Board of Governors member. Were you involved at all in the? Now, correct me if I'm wrong. I might be wrong with the timing, but were you involved in the search for Dr. Powell's replacement?
Well, I went to all the meetings, of course, and one person that was people liked. He hadn't been offered the job yet, but it was a possibility. And of course, I went every time people talked here in the auditorium and so on. I went home to the Alumni house with the wife of this man, and she couldn't stand the thought of such a small town and being 30 miles, 50 miles, 100 miles away from Charleston or Morgantown or something where you could really shop and maybe, the whole bit.
Uh-huh.
Somebody else got a hint of that too, and the man didn't get the offer. but he probably got a strong hint from his wife anyway, so that we went on from
Okay.
there.
So you were involved in the selection of Dr.
I
Freeman?
was, yeah.
Okay. Is after the Dr. Powell administration, is there anything you'd like to say? I mean, you said you got along with Dr. Powell very well.
Oh yes, I've been to his house in Maryland.
Uh-huh.
Some people liked him very much, and some people disapproved of him, which I suppose you know a whole lot.
Uh-huh.
27 of us went from Glenville College to his inauguration in Maryland.
Uh-huh.
And I thought that I didn't know that was all happening. I was going personally because of my friendship with them, and I was very much impressed that so many people from Glenville liked him that well.
So you believe that with the hurdles that he was faced with, he made the best decisions the decisions he thought was right for his school.
He made some national news and got offers before the one he took without applying to go somewhere else. He was getting offers to other places to get them out of their troubles.
Oh, I see. Just from his time period here at Glenville?
Yes, yes.
Okay. All right. Well, moving a little bit forward, you basically, as you said, you felt that you were getting a little bit older, and you didn't, if you couldn't express yourself the perfectly way that you had been able to, you basically didn't want to carry on as a board member.
That's right. I thought somebody else could do better than I.
Okay. So what happened after that?
Oh, let's see. I also, about that time, quit writing my column, the musings column that I wrote. I think I started that column before I was a board member.
Musings of an old timer.
Yes.
Okay.
And thoroughly enjoyed that because it didn't have a theme except how things were. So it jumped from whatever was happening right now, and I could do it about the college, the folk festival, a runaway dog, whatever I wanted, or remembers of the things happening at the farm. And then one of the very nice things happened before I moved away from here was that the Country Store Museum decided that if all those columns were put in a book, it would make a fundraiser for the folk festival.
Uh-huh.
And oh well, I did have 10 years that I ran the Country Store Museum. I wasn't not artist. I'm not an artist at all, but I could schedule people to come clean it up or schedule people. I had it open every Friday and Saturday, and if anything was going on in town that looked like they had a few hours or an hour or so that they might come to the country store, I'd put a sign up that it was open and get somebody there, myself or somebody else. So I did that for 10 years.
So you were a member of the Folk Festival Committee?
From the very beginning. I had been coming here for Elder Hostel and got to know Mac and Thelma Samples, and I came for Alumni Days quite often. I mean, I came back here because I loved it here and had lots of friends here. And so the first Folk Festival Committee that got in the newspaper said anyone who would like to help, come. I went to the committee.
So this would have been about 1990?
Yes,
Yeah? Okay.
the fall, 91,
Okay.
because I moved in here in October 1990.
Okay.
And so I said to my family when I got home, I went to a committee meeting and I didn't get any assignment at all. Nobody put me to work. And the next day I had a call from Dr. Pribble, who was chairman of the Bell Committee, and I became the secretary for the Bell Committee. And then I started working on the newspaper, and then I got the country store, and history. I did lots of.
So basically, along with the things you were doing here at the college, there was other things in the community that were going that you were a part of.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. Is there anything else you'd like to say about your time in interaction with the Folk Festival, and especially since today is actually the second day of the Folk Festival, the Friday? I guess it would be the 63rd?
Oh, I don't remember. I read the newspaper this morning, but it started in 1950, so it should be the 64th.
64th?
Yes.
Okay.
And yep, and I don't know, I haven't been in the country store yet to see if they've got the West Virginia flag as it was in 1950, but I got one made and had it on display in the country store at one time.
Uh-huh.
And everything, it's doing very well. The publicity didn't get to me in Virginia this year much, but I knew that it started on the third Thursday of the month, and so I just read the newspaper this morning. I haven't gotten in last night, and I've already been asked to sign my Musings of an Old Timer book tomorrow afternoon at 2 o'clock in the country store. David Millard is treasurer now. He was president, and somebody has decided that 2 years is enough for every president. I got to know very well Jenny Hawker, Tracy Schwartz, and Richmond, Virginia, I didn't know, has a folk festival about 10 times the size of this one, and they're on the program down there. So last summer, my daughter and son-in-law took me to the folk festival there, and by that time, Jenny had told me she was coming, so I had Jenny and Tracy come over to where I lived for dinner one night, and they were, their program was just great, just like we have here. And I didn't think anybody could have a folk festival with better music than we have here, but if they've got 10 times as many people, they've got more music.
Yes, and Richmond is a very, very large city.
Yeah,
so.
But Glenville, the very dedicated music people don't say West Virginia Folk Festival, they say Glenville. Are you going to Glenville this year, Oh yes, got to go to Glenville. And Glenville is a name out around the music sector. And I'm very happy to be a part of it and understand what's going on.
Yes. Okay, well, so I've probably taken about an hour of your time, so I don't take any longer. Is there anything you'd like to add? I mean, anything at all about your life, about the college, just anything at all that you can think of?
Well, my mother was full of maxims, and all things work together for good to those that love the Lord. Or Dad's, the one I really, really live by, is don't make excuses for yourself, but always make excuses for the other person. And when somebody does something I don't like, I try to figure, who are they? Why did they do it? What did they get to gain for it? And it's kept me pleasant, I guess. That's why I don't make waves when things go wrong. If I can change it, I'm likely to try quietly through the background, but if I can't, why, okay. And I can be outvoted. I don't insist on having my own way. If the majority wants it some other way, I can be outvoted. And I think that's important for an easy life. I would say my life's been very easy.
Okay. Well, Fran, I'd like to thank you for taking part in this interview, but I'd especially like to thank you for your dedication that you have shown to Glenville State College and the service that you've given in your later years. And I hope the best for you.
Thank you very much.